It's the final day of 2024, which turned out to be a pretty damn good year for movies. But before we look back and celebrate the best, we have to run through the trenches one more time just so we never have to go back to the worst. My name is Ren, and these are my worst movies of 2024. Welcome back, film family. And thank you for joining me for my penultimate end of year list. I already uploaded my most surprising and disappointing films. We will have shorts for my honorable mentions, and we will conclude 2024 with my best movies of the year. But before celebrating all the movies that made us happy about loving movies, we have to remind ourselves of why these movies made us sad and angry that we all love movies so much. As always, this isn't the right list, this is my list. I'm sure I missed a ton of movies that you all will have on your list. So remember to start the conversation about it in the comments below and let me know your list of worst. I only compiled 10 because I only have so much patience to talk about bad movies. So with all that out of the way, let's get started with number 10, the least of the worst. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, a film that just saddens me to have on this list, but I generally only found 9 of the other terrible movies I saw this year to be any worse than it, and it sucks, because I'm a Zack Snyder fan. I'm always rooting for him. You always know when you're watching a Zack Snyder film. For better or worse, he is a director with a distinct vision and voice. And all of that was stripped away due to this cynical filmmaking approach deal with Netflix, where we're gonna do PG-13 versions that take away the uniqueness of Zack Snyder as a filmmaker, and we're gonna release that only to release director's cuts afterwards. And all the director's cuts do is add sex and violence. They don't add more action sequences, they don't add more sequences to develop the characters, flesh out the world building and mythology, make it compelling. So it doesn't feel like Zack Snyder's Star Wars, it feels like Netflix's Star Wars, and Zack Snyder just so happens to direct it. It's heartbreaking, it's disappointing, and unlike so many other Zack Snyder films, it doesn't leave a mark whatsoever. Never Let Go, the Halle Berry forest set horror film that really wants to be a quiet place. Spoiler alert, this is not a quiet place. At no point did anything about this film come together. There's an initial premise that can be compelling in concept, but from then, the movie develops none of it. It creates this vague mythology that has underlying ideas on it, but it never commits to anything. It doesn't feel like it was a fully fleshed out world. It doesn't feel like it's a fully fleshed out script. And so you're in this back and forth, this push and pull that just doesn't work and makes this watch uneventful and frustrating. Maybe the mother didn't want her sons to let go of the rope. This movie never let me go of my boredom. Imaginary marks our annual Blumhouse entry in the worst movies of the year for 2024. And this is a film that just entirely wastes its premise and ideas. You're doing Chucky, you're doing Meg instead of a robot, instead of a doll. It's an imaginary friend. A film that it's all about the limitless power of imagination. And it feels like it's trying to create a franchise so forcefully where it picks up on these tropes. You get actors, characters that are straight out of The Conjuring and Insidious, and it's just trying to do the exact same thing without adding any new flair to it. It feels like a ripoff of movies that aren't necessarily all that good, all of them at least. You've seen all those franchises recently in a landscape of Hollywood where those franchises at this point are already becoming oversaturated. And then you have this, which is a lazy approach to all of it. You want to create a world where imagination creates all these nightmares and these monsters. It doesn't explore any of its ideas. Are we going to see any of that? No, we're not. At some point, a character speaks the specific line, anything is possible with the power of imagination. And all they do is create a door to leave and come back to the real world. A waste of time and a waste of your premise. Brothers is a truly depressing film. Not because it's sad or it deals with depression, it's because this is meant to be a comedy. Directed by Max Barbacow, who brought us Palm Springs, that made it into my top best movies of the year it came out. And now we have this. Was Palm Springs a fluke? Because this is an insanely unfunny movie where characters are immensely unlikable without being interesting enough to justify their unlikability. It's an hour and a half of terrible people making terrible choices. There are meant to be comedic, but I didn't giggle, I didn't chuckle, I didn't laugh once. You just want to follow other characters, any characters but these ones. It's also so forgettable. There's nothing about it that stands out. There's nothing about it that utilizes the charisma, the charm, the likability of all these actors. It is a complete misfire in every way, and I hope we can get more back to what Palm Springs was. Harvest marks our annual entry of a festival film in my worst movies of the year. Ever since I started attending the Venice Film Festival and go to 2 festivals a year, there's always one, and this was the most I felt like my time was wasted on a movie. For 2 hours, I saw a total of 200 people leaving my screening at Venice to go out into the sun and the heat, and I wish I would have followed them. I cannot even tell you what happens in this film that makes it so bad, because what makes this film so bad is that nothing happens in it. It starts as this moody, transportative period piece where a village gets attacked and there's a mystery behind it. Is this folk horror? There's no horror. There's no folk. It's just people that live away from everything else, and then this new guy comes and he just wants to do it the way he wants to do it. But you don't care about any of the characters, good or bad. You just follow Caleb Landry Jones as he passively watches everything that happens and takes absolute no interest or action to perpetuate it or to stop it. You feel like you're a fly on the wall, but the characters in this movie are flies on the wall who are completely inactive and uninteresting. The absolute biggest waste of time in the movie I had this year was Harvest. I could have been at the beach. I could have been writing reviews for other movies that were more interesting in a very busy festival. So while Harvest may not be the absolute worst movie for me of 2024, it is without a doubt the movie I hate the most. The Strangers Chapter 1 is the one film on this list I knew instantly, as soon as I saw it, was going to be somewhere in this bottom 10. You know why? Because as soon as it finished, the credits was still rolling in front of me, I couldn't remember a single character name, a line of dialogue, a sequence, a set piece. All it did was recreate, moment by moment, the original The Strangers from 2008, which is quite the underrated horror movie, but just does a worse version of it. What doesn't help is that the characters in this film are insanely stupid people. I'm gonna root for them to die. But the problem also with that is the kills aren't even that interesting. The moments of fear and suspense, how you're building up to these deaths, they're not even that clever. They're not even that interesting. I don't remember a single kill in this film because it is all so tame. All I can hope right now is that the others are any better, which is not a tall order to be honest, but if they aren't, I will keep being a stranger to this franchise. Unfrosted, the Jerry Seinfeld story about the origin of the Pop Tart that he has been trying to come up with for 10 years. If you have to think of the punchline for a joke for 10 years, maybe there's just nothing there. And when the punchline to your joke is, "It blew the back of my head right off," raise your hand if you laughed at that. Raise your hand if you ever wanted to know the origin of the Pop Tart by way of Jerry Seinfeld, where it's trying to tell the story of the Pop Tart, but it's also the story of how mistreated the cereal mascots were, and then it also has elements of the scientists that came up with this, and some of them were Nazis. Where's the joke? Nothing about this film connects. It's trying to do so many things, grasping at so many straws, just throwing spaghetti at the wall for 90 minutes. None of it sticks. There's a reason why SNL exists. It's just so these don't have to be 90 minutes. Ahead of diving into my top 3, don't forget to start the conversation in the comments below with your worst movies of the year. Any movies you're surprised to see on my list, any movies you think should have been on my list, and where's the crossover here? Any movies on here that you missed? Let me know anything and everything down there. If you're enjoying this list, there's many like it right up here from previous years. I will upload more as the final day of 2024 goes on. And if you want to stick around, talk more movies and TV with me, this is the place to be. Click that subscribe button and you won't miss any future conversations on your favorite movies and TV. Megamind and the Doom Syndicate is our staple animated entry for the worst of the year this time, because there's always going to be one, and no animated film in 2024 felt as cynical as Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. A film that is immensely beloved, that was immensely successful back in the days where superhero movies were just getting going. They were just becoming the popular thing. We wait way too long for a film that delivers none of the charm, none of the likability, none of the ingenuity or cleverness. Its only purpose is to give us an entry point for an animated show. It's cynical. It goes against everything that film was. It's not what people were asking for at all. The animation is cheap, and I feel sorry for the animators that got so much flack earlier in this year. It just undoes so much of what the original film earned. It takes away that sense of victory and triumph, and it cheapens out everything. I'm being generous, but I like to call this one mega mid. Lift is our runner-up, and it certainly did not lift my spirits. To the surprise of no one, a Netflix movie that gathers a very talented, charismatic cast with Kevin Hart, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, freaking Jean Reno, Billy Magnuson, Vincent D'Onofrio, Jacob Batalon, directed by F. Gary Gray. It just feels so on autopilot. I don't believe that F. Gary Gray actually directed this. Everyone on screen just delivers all these cliched first draft level lines so dispassionately. It is a story you've seen 1,000 times before, but a heist movie that takes place on a plane while on air, that feels like a very Michael Bay sort of premise. Nothing comes together. It truly is something that just came out of the Netflix conveyor belt, and it's as lifeless as you can think. Truly astonishing. It is an actual skill to pull something off that feels this lifeless and devoid of energy. Madam Web is perhaps the most obvious choice I could have for a #1 worst film of 2024, but truly, no other film this year sucked the energy, the joy, and the passion for movies out of me as much as this cynical corporate piece of waste did. I watched this film in America. To this day, this is the one and only film I watched in the USA at an AMC screening at the AMC Burbank 16. I dragged my good friend who put up with me for a week staying at her place, Tessa Smith, Mama's Geeky, to go see this again because she had gone to the press screening. And I feel sorry to this day that I dragged her, that I dragged myself to waste my time in something that is so devoid of vision, something that is so devoid of structure, something that is so devoid of any sense of direction. The best part of Madam Web was the press tour of Madam Web. It's just baffling. Like, what are we doing? What are these lines of dialogue? What are these people on trees called the spiders? Why does the man, the leader of this tribe, when she goes back, is just dressed like a regular human being? Why are we casting Sydney Sweeney as a high school girl? Why does this man want to kill these people because of the spider, even though they're just visions? Like, just stop being a bad dude. Why is the ADR so obvious and so bad? This is a movie that makes everyone involved with it look terrible by association, and it is the epitome of the cynical stance Sony has had in making these Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies. You want to be Spider-Man adjacent, but you don't want to be associated with Spider-Man, even though they have the rights. It's their IP. They're not gonna get in legal trouble. You own Spider-Man. You can reference Spider-Man. If Mary Parker is pregnant, she can say the baby is Peter. If Ben Parker meets someone, he can say her name is May. This movie literally ends with literal fireworks going off in the background just because we have to get some sense of something's happening, and the literal neon sign of the P in Pepsi falls on our villain. That's how he dies. Madam Web truly is the epitome of lifeless. It is the epitome of everything wrong with Sony's approach to all these Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies. And no other movie in 2024 fill me with as much sorrow for every creative involved in what feels like a hostage situation led by misguided and cynical studio executives. That is why Madam Web is my #1 worst film of 2024. That does it, film family. We've ran the final gauntlet. We never have to think or talk about these films again, never allow them to take our joy of loving movies away ever again. Thank you so much for watching. I cannot wait to see how your lists look like. Make sure to stay tuned for the honorable mentions and for the best movies of the year, and check out my biggest surprises / biggest disappointments if you haven't yet. I hope to see you in all of those. I hope to see you in the new year. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.